So we got all the electrical done in the SL, and I'm gonna go through all that right now. First, all the green wires, I did a little bit differently than most people. The green wires are positive, the black wires negative. I think it looks cooler like this, and it kind of goes with the car. The car is gonna be completely black, so this stuff should look kind of cool. In the back here, we've got the fan that is running for the oil cooler, so that those lines are in the works. And then on this side, I've got the fan for the Supercharger cooler. The stuff I did here, I had to put everything in place first, just so that I know how long to make the lines and make everything nice. They're not fully bolted in yet. I'm probably gonna put from this bolt up, like from the tower bolt up, and make a bracket that goes across, kind of like a strut tire brace from one side to the other to hold these things up and be more secure. But for now, everything's in place, and I was just able to get to the wiring and the hoses. So those are wired up. They go to a fuse box in the front, which I'll get to. Then we got the fuel pumps here. We have a dual fuel pump. These both go through the firewall to the fuse box in the back. And then on the inside, we've got a lift pump, which feeds the surge tank in the inside of the tank. What that surge tank does is, what the lift pump does is it fills the surge tank full of fluids, and it constantly is staying full. So when the car is shifting back and forth, and you have all that fluid moving in your fuel tank, that is always full, and you're always pulling from that tank, and you never have starvation. Then in here we've got a level sensor, so that'll go to a gauge, and we know how, it's not hooked up yet, but it's fine. We will be able to tell if that thing's full or getting empty, and then we can fill based on that. Pretty simple stuff. Then down here we've got the radiator water pump. This is wired up, running 28 lines. We're still waiting on the lines, that's why this is not ready yet. And then on the radiator, we've got the radiator fans. So we've got two big, huge fans. Those are wired individually to the fuse box and the switches, and I can turn those all of these can be turned on individually. Then over here, off of the Supercharger cooler, we've got the Supercharger water pump, and this is just pushing fluid through all the way. It's just a similar idea with this radiator pump. We have so much fluid we're pushing from the back of the car to the front of the car and back of the car. So the Supercharger pump is the only pump in the system, but for the radiator pump, it's helping the stock pump, which is on the engine. So those are 20 ANs, it's big pipe, and we're gonna definitely have enough flow to keep everything nice and cool. I overwired everything, so I stepped everything up 1 gauge of wire more than it was needed, just to play it safe, and also say something gets a little cut, they still run for a little bit longer period. So it's a bit of a safety feature I decided to do. Not totally necessary, but it doesn't cost that much more. Okay, so I think that's basically everything in the back here. Let's move to the inside of the car, and I could show how we ran all the electronics. So on the inside here is really where everything's hooked up. So over here, this is the main battery switch. There's also one on the outside of the car, which is on right now. So when I flick this, you'll see the dash turn on. And then here is my switch panel. And I'll put some cool lights. So I can label each of these switches to different accessories. I don't have them labeled yet, but for example, if I click a button here, you can hear the fan. And what this is controlling, and this is basically just switches. So these are on-off switches, which can also be programmed as momentary switches. So on the top left here is going to be my starter, and I'll just be able to press this and let go as the starter turns on and off, and that'll turn the car on, and then I can just turn on everything I want individually here, and those are just on and off. Then all that wiring runs to the ECU, which is going to run the engine, which we're getting into tuning right now. And then in the back of the car, is what all those switches are controlling. So each of these is individually labeled, and you can see when I click, the light is showing what is being controlled, and those are those two fans. These all have switches on them individually, and then on the right side here we have all the relays. I'm gonna clean this all up and put nice little clamp mounts, but I didn't get it to yet. We're just getting the engine started. All that runs to this battery, which is mounted in the rear of the car. Originally I was gonna run this in the very back of the car, but I decided that I want to keep as much stuff out of the crash area of the car, and I can actually go through that right now. So if we come up here, what I decided to do in the back is everything from here forward on the car, and this chair is not going to be there when it's running, but everything here from this frame rail forward is the crash zone. And I don't want too much stuff there. The only thing I'm gonna have is these fans bolted to a radiator, which will go about right here. So when and if and when I hit a wall, all of this will crush in, but nothing will be affected. The car can still keep running, and we just have to pull this thing out, and everything stays safe. So originally the battery would be here, and I wanted to offset the weight of the driver and the engine, and then the wiring just ended up being easier doing it on the inside. The main thing you have to think of when you put the battery on the inside of the car is if we come over here, you have to build something, you have to either build something to cover the battery, or you need to put this in a box and to separate it from the driver. So when I was thinking about how I'm going to run the hoses under the car, I decided I'm going to run them up through the back, and you can see some of the hoses coming out here and here to, water and fuel and all that. So I decided I'll just have them all run up here, we'll put the battery in the back and run a cover all the way across. So that's not there yet, but we'll get to it. And on this here, I had to build a firewall, because you have to separate the driver from the radiator and all the stuff in the back. So this will get cut out to be the shape of the rear windshield, which goes down, and then we'll have a seal across that. So on the top here, when the rear windshield comes down, you'll be able to see into here, but you'll also be able to see this. And the rear windshield ends about right here. So this should look pretty cool. This will be all transparent. And these fans are gonna pull air from under the car. So this will be, down here is open. Air comes pulled out, and that'll come out and run through the back of the car. I think that's about everything here. Inside here, how I ran this wire is from the battery, and I put some clamps to hold it. It'll be under the seat, and this main wire runs to the starter in the front, and then from the starter runs to our master battery switch. Gives the second one there, and then that runs all of the electrical. So in safety wise, I can turn off all the electrical here, I can turn all the electrical on the outside of the car, and then this is just nice and clean. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to run a linkage off of here for the shifter, or I'm going to run an extended one here. We'll see once I put the seat in the car, and that's coming up a little bit later. And I think that's everything on the inside. Let's go to the front. A few updates. So first off, we designed our own intake. I can go more in depth on this if people want to, but about 150 bucks, you can do this yourself, carbon fiber intake. Don't spend $800 or whatever it is people want you to pay for a Hellcat intake that's carbon. That's ridiculous. And then another thing we did here, Sean at SLR actually designed this little plate, which allows us to turn the throttle body, and where originally this stuff is all like poking out really high, which then you'd have to cut into the hood. But instead, we're just gonna cut a nice square to allow just the supercharger to stick out, and all of this gets turned and tucked down. So that should look a lot better visually. So that's the main reason for that. We might start selling these plates. If you want to buy one, let us know. And then since we deleted the AC, we had to run a custom length belt because the AC was usually in this area. If you want to know what this is, just let me know. I can tell you the part number. I can't see it right now, probably because of this mask. On the bottom here, because we lowered the engine so much, we needed a way to get to the oil filter. So the oil filter originally is vertical, kind of like this, down there, and it would be impossible to get to. So we ran this new bracket. It puts the oil filter at 90 degrees, and now it's very easy to access. And that allowed us to go even lower with the engine. And under the engine, we're running a rear sump oil pan. So really can't go any lower with this physically without modifying the subframe, which is illegal for Formula Drift. So keep all these things in mind when you're building it. This is a little bit pricey. I think it's like $250 if I remember right. Then off that starter wire I was saying in the inside, it runs to the alternator right here. You just split it off the starter, and the starter splits off to the master switch. So the master switch is right here, and this is what is required in Formula Drift and most racing. It's mounted on the driver's side. It's not mounted physically yet, but it's going to be here. And this allows it to where when you crash or your car's on fire or something crazy happens, they run up and they grab the key right out, and your whole car's electrical is shut off. So that's a requirement. Keep that in mind. You have to run a longer wire up to here and be able to turn off your whole battery system. Then on this engine, we've got the whole wiring harness all connected. It's a custom harness, and basically everything worked out okay. I had to replace a couple of sensors that were broken from whoever had this engine before, since this is a used engine, low mileage. But one thing I did do electrically in the front is from this original fuel rail, which usually mounts around here, you have this fuel pressure sensor. This doesn't convert nicely to AN, and we ran this whole car with AN lines. I have a diagram I'm going to show on the next video with the AN lines and how that all goes together, and I'll show in the video how it all goes together. But couldn't reuse this, so what I did is I put this fitting right here. These fuel rails I have a nice 1/8 NPT fitting, and it's just a really simple fuel pressure line, and that'll runs off 3 wires to your harness. Really easy to rewire, so you don't have to figure out a way to reuse this. You can get a sensor like that. And again, if you want to know what that is, happy to tell you everything about this car. I got everything, the lowest cost you could possibly get it. Just want to help you guys. So I think that is everything electrical that I can think of right now. If I missed anything, I might go through it on the next video. But next video, I'll go through all these AN lines, which we're still working on, how we did all that. I'll show you all the diagrams, and also in this video, linked below is the diagrams to all the wiring. So if you want to copy the wiring and figure out how I hooked everything up, I drew that all out for you to use yourself. All right, so next video, hoses. See you then.